All right, let's go.
David Roney, Greater Nashville 2014 Corps. Before I went over on the Justice Journey, I thought that my work with students would be very much, I had a much more nuts and bolts idea of especially what Institute would be. Obviously we're still just in induction and I know I'm going to get all those nuts and bolts things. But as a substitute, I knew how many skills I lacked and how much work it would be to get to a place where I was an excellent teacher. And now after the Justice Journeys, I've come to very much believe that being an excellent teacher is about first being an excellent human being and being open and capable of empathy in a very broad, but very real sense. So to understand where my students come from and where their ancestors came from and celebrate that in the classroom, I think is now what I envision my work as being, and I'm energized by that.
Okay. Would you recommend this experience for other incoming Corps members? Why or why not?
I absolutely would not only recommend it for other incoming Corps members, but also staff members who haven't been through it and anybody working in education who hasn't been through it. Not just because of the very specific moments in history that are brought up and then addressed, but also just as a community building exercise with other like-minded people off of whom you can play, who are difficult to find in my experience just wandering through the world. It's a nice confluence of people who all have aspirations that are based on social justice, and to pass up an opportunity to pick their brains and to push each other to some really important and powerful realizations, I think is an absolute travesty.
What was your favorite part of the Justice Journey and why?
My favorite part of it was the most difficult part of it, I think. The programming this morning, when we looked at specific moments of the specific births of educational inequalities and of social inequalities, and then the afternoon programming when we were trying to reconcile them and understand our cognitive dissonance. I suppose I should speak for myself, my cognitive dissonance. I come from a lot of the privilege that has oppressed others, and it's not something of which I was not aware. It's something with which I've grappled for my entire young adult and into my adult life, and it was an interesting and important, I think, setting to have that emotional and intellectual experience outside of the isolation I felt in it most of the time. To be able to articulate it and to be able to put it on the floor and let it be picked apart was a really vulnerable experience for me, and I think one that was very important. And the fact that the writers of the program and the facilitators of the discussions were able to create a space and an environment that was open to all those things, I think is just outstanding. And it's not only a model of how to think about oppression and social justice, but it's also a model for how to think about being a facilitator instead of an educator.
Last question, what are you committing to doing after this experience?
My commitment that I wrote down for our Brick by Brick was relatively poetic, for which I'm gonna forgive myself, but the idea is involved in a quotation that I read to the group for our transformational change discussion in one of the morning meetings, that if you want to build a ship, you shouldn't drum up men and divide work and set assignments. Instead, you should teach those men to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And that's my idea as a teacher: empower my students to push themselves and to dream themselves and to want themselves all of the things that I want for them.